What's going on, guys? This is Josh Answers, and I'm going to make a video a little different than most of the videos that I've done, but very practical in the sense that it does relate to trading and investing in a way, but probably in a way you guys wouldn't expect. And why do I say that? Because I have a degree in political science, and as you know, over the last 10 years of investing and trading and doing all that, I've gotten to learn, it's given me an advantage and stuff. And I'm looking at a lot of stuff that a lot of traders and people have not been looking at. So I want to bring up some points, and I think this is something cool. Vladimir, not, well, it's not cool, but Vladimir Putin's, his presidential chauffeur was killed in a crash. And I want to use this as something because a lot of people, I've talked to some of the brothers and pledgers, even citizens, and nobody really heard about this. And, that just begs the question for me, if you guys haven't even heard something, this is like sensationalism. This is a car crash, if you haven't even heard about that, what other stuffs are you lacking from the political sphere that could affect your trades, investments, money, gold, whatever it may be. And that's why I want to talk about this, because Russia is actually very important right now to the global economy, and even how it's been affecting the stock market, the valuations of currencies, and the effect that has on the global economy. So this is one thing I want to do and tell you guys. I'm sure some of you are probably going to think this is weird. Some of you are going to probably unsubscribe, which is kind of what I want. If I got you guys unsubscribing, that means I'm doing something right. I'm here to give information. I don't really care whether who likes it or not. But this is very, very important, I guess, the implication. So let me show you guys this, and let me give you a warning too, because I want to show you guys how you could relate this on an intellectual level towards, I guess, making money or protecting your assets or investments or future, whatever you want to call it. Because I don't want you guys to turn into crackpots, tinfoil, conspiracy theories, looking at stuff. I do have my ideas and beliefs. I'll call myself that jokingly, but at the same time, please stay grounded. And I don't want you guys looking at every single thing, and coming up with crazy theories, because that's not always how it works. Just want to show you and relate it to a couple of things important politically that have been affecting our economy or that potentially can affect it. So here's the video if you guys have seen it. Take a look. Pretty much a black CLS is coming down the Russian highway, and it collides with literally, this is Putin's BMW. He's not in it. And actually, the context behind this, to give you guys some importance, is this was right before Putin, or I'm pretty sure it's even on the way. There's a lot of speculation around it. Was on his way towards the G20. And again, that was very important. That happened in the last couple of weeks, and that had a lot of political implications that stems all the way down to the markets. If you don't think that affects the markets, I'd reevaluate how you look at things. So take a look. There it is. And boom. So I'm sure it'll play it again. I think it will. Yeah, I might need to bring that back for you guys. It happens really fast, so you're gonna have to watch it again. But literally, this car is going down. This is the speedway. I guess this is like their carpool lane, and you'll see it just starts to veer off and hit it. And there's a couple theories with this. So there's the car. It's coming in, and now it veers, and then head on with the BMW. That is Putin's BMW right there. He was not in the car again, but this was his driver. It was referred to as Putin's favorite driver. Yeah, this was his driver for 40 years. Apparently, this guy was, employed by Putin for that long, or employed by the presidential campaign or government, whatever you want to call it. But it's very interesting. Some people will say it's an accident. Some people will say it wasn't. Whatever it may be, we could look at possible stuff. I'll even relate it to some other stuff in the markets. But it's very interesting. Why this caught my attention, because, anything with Vladimir Putin in Russia, I'm looking at a lot of that stuff with, doing some economic analysis. And for a president's car to get hit, just you guys saw the trajectory of that, just think about the planning of that, because some people will say it's planned. That's the BMW, and it already was veering a little bit, which was interesting. And boom. So it's weird, because you got to think about it. Why then And now here's something interesting. I will say, more often than not, a presidential car would have someone trail. Again, Putin wasn't in it. There was no trailer behind it. But then I showed Sergey, shout out Sergey, this video, and you see this black Range Rover here. That's usually a trailing car. So, and I've seen some reports that initially said that the Mercedes was Putin's Mercedes, and it was the other way around. So that's something interesting. But like I was saying, imagine the trajectory of that. What are the chances that you could see a car going one way, and for another car to come the exact? That's some crazy math right there to be able to figure that out. So there's that, and it's interesting to see what happened again. He wasn't in there. This was the day of the G20. Or he was already. Some would say he was already there. Some were saying, there's different, conspiracy sites and different news reports saying that he already left and that he got tipped off or whatever. He didn't go in the car, but it's very interesting. I'll talk about what happened at the G20 and what it relates to, but looking at kind of this accident and what went down, one thing that I will talk about is this is something pretty big if you wanted to look at it from the sense that, he just, his car, this was his car, was involved in an accident, and you could call it an accident, you could call it, some are even calling it pretty much a assassination attempt, but clearly he wasn't in the car, and that's one thing I'll point up that some people will say, like, oh, it's an assassination attempt. Like, here's what I'll say. Do you really think the president of Russia is driving in rush hour traffic by himself? If that was the case, no, this guy goes out, he has armored cars, he has, they have a convoy, they shut down the streets, if anything, and he's a very secretive guy, and maybe that's why people can assert that that's why he may have been in a car traveling like that. But again, he wasn't in that car. But this isn't really a assassination attempt. I would not say that, based on my experience. But again, I don't have too much experience with assassination attempts. But the thing that is very interesting about it is that even if they weren't trying to kill the president or assassinate him, this definitely, if it was an accident, it does send a message. Even if it is an accident, it sends some sort of message. One, what are the odds of, again, because now at the same time, you don't see the president fucking driving in rush hour traffic, but then what are the odds that this type of accident, the car that gets hit head on, is the car owned by Vladimir Putin? And this was his driver, his most trusted driver. That's very interesting. But it definitely could show some displeasure. Now that's where it could lead to some of the other political events, because and this is also what leads, I'll talk about who could be displeased with it, because that's where the economics come into play. That's where, if you look at the money and how it's been affecting the stock market, it's, you see why people wouldn't like Putin. I'll tell you, I don't think he's that bad, from an economic leader standpoint. So, crucify me for that. But I'll bring up another point, because I guess some people who don't like him think about how this could even relate. If the Putin was in the car, but even if he wasn't, this could foreshadow stuff about the election. As crazy as that would sound, but who look at both candidates in the election. I'm actually going to talk about my thoughts on the presidential election in another video. But think about the two sides of the coin. You have Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. One of them says he's friends with Putin, says he likes him, says he admires the guy. The other one calls him Hitler. Regardless if this was accident or not, from a political standpoint, this could heighten tensions with both the candidates, but any country that has had any issues with Russia, and we're going to talk about that related to the sanctions and whatnot. But that, it's not really good, and I'm sure these guys are already paranoid to begin with. So when something like that happens, it could be construed as a message. And now I guess on a weird note, to talk about another thing, I saw somebody say this on one of the comments. They said, was it a remote control car? And I'm sure they said that as a joke, but then that just reminded me of, literally, I think a couple days within this happened, I think somebody died driving in a self-driving car. And go turn on CNBC, go turn on Bloomberg, go look at the expenditures for companies that have been spending on self-driving cars. it's actually funny because that could even pose, in a weird way, a new sort of threat that really we would think of as kind of crazy, but they exist nowadays. Cars that drive themselves exist. I literally we know if you're in TTF, you know somebody who works on those, and even then, I think the other day, also a Tesla got hacked from like 12 miles away. So, and again, I was saying the trajectory of all this, that was math. That to make that happen at that time, that was a lot of math. What's the only thing that could do that type of math? A computer. But again, I'm not here to. That's not really the point of what to speculate on. But again, there is some implications you could take. Who knows? Maybe we'll see even more news on Tesla, more errors, whatever it may be. Mobileye obviously doesn't like that. But that's one thing. But now let's talk about why this is important. Why would this capture my attention? Because this has to do with Russia. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with Russia and now why even, you know, something is minor, it could be an accident. You don't have to be a conspiracist, but put yourself in the shoes of Vladimir Putin. For the last 3 to 5 years, a lot of Western or modern governments have been literally attacking him in the form of many ways. So look at economic sanctions. A lot of people don't realize, you guys know, go look at when the first economic sanctions were imposed on Russia, it will coincide with the big drops in oil that we saw from $100. A lot of you don't realize that, but why would that make sense? I don't know. Maybe because oil's the number one producer of oil. Russia's the number one producer of oil in the world. So that had a big effect, but not only that, they sanctioned them. You guys remember all that Georgia crap, Russia invading Georgia, the issues with invading Ukraine, and then especially Crimea. And now that goes to the G20. There's a lot of meetings in G20, and a lot of developments came from other countries that I'll talk about too. But looking at this in that scope, this was days or at least a week or two before. This actually happened a couple days ago. There was elections in Crimea to vote for Russia to pretty much annex it completely. Although it's kind of already been done by Putin himself and there's Russian troops there, the Western world is very against it. You go to the state.gov, you'll see a statement from the last 2 days literally by the United States saying we do not recognize these elections as legitimate. They're commenting on Crimea. Now that's one thing I'll bring up. How many of you guys know what the fuck Crimea is? How that affects your money? How that affects the stock market? You probably don't give a fuck. And that's one thing I'll tell you, because that actually has to do with why Russia is being sanctioned. It is for their involvement with Ukraine. And then I could also get into how that affects the pipelines in Syria, Iran, and all that stuff. But I'll leave that to see how you guys respond to this, you motherfuckers. But even then, that's one implication that you could take away from it is, with this happening before. And I'm not saying how this relates is because put yourself in Putin's shoes. You're about to go to the G20, whether you were in China or not, your car that your driver was in gets hit like this. And on top of that, you've been getting sanctioned. Your country's been getting literally attacked economically to do many things. Even think about what happened also a couple days, literally following right after this. We heard from John Kerry that there's been agreements with Russia to have a ceasefire in Syria. And then literally within 24 hours, they say, oh, that's over with. You see that stuff. You see the sanctions. And I'll talk about what that's done for Russia because, I have Russian friends, and the concepts that it's been hard there. And for really if you see what these sanctions have done to the economy, but, importantly, the people, it's pretty nuts. And so imagine, I doubt he's going to say this is, write this off as an accident, because it could be clearly taken as a message, conspiracy or not, whatever you think it is. So that's why I'm saying, this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because we may see stuff out of Russia, or at least I keep my eye on it, and also how the elections go, to be honest. And, going into more in Russia, like I said, that's what's caused the oil crisis, and it's funny because up until we heard about China yuan devaluations, anything else going on that's been hurting the economy, high PEs, What was the first thing you could remember in the last 3 years why the market has dropped? Oil. This all relates, and even then another sanction even got put on even some US companies or companies dealing with the US because Putin's building a bridge between Ukraine and Russia. They're calling it Putin's bridge, and any company that has actually worked on it is being sanctioned right now by the United States. Excuse me. Which is very important to know. But pretty much if Putin died, I guess to say the least, or if something happens to him, that would be a huge blow to Russia, but that would also make it a lot easier for the world, as fucked up as that may sound, because Russia is an economic power. Again, they control one of the largest natural resources, and that's oil, and their relationship with even China, Europe, and any of those countries on the eastern half of the world. It's pretty important. But again, looking at the whole situation in Russia, it does have a big effect on everything. Go look at any important issue right now, whether it be oil, the stock market, what's going on in the Middle East, ISIS. You guys worried about ISIS? Russia's smack dab in the middle of that. They're dealing with it, and then I'll even encourage you guys, when you see these events kind of like Ukraine and anything like that, pay attention to that stuff, because here's the thing. Nothing has more of an effect on global trade than sanctions. They're literally taking people out of the market. So the sanctions that were put on Russia, I guess the point to see economically, and why I'm keeping my eye on it even more now, because this was just interesting to me. When those sanctions first occurred, it led to a dramatic devaluation in the ruble, over 100%. Even then, go look up. I'm sure some of you don't even know. I showed this to some of the brothers and pledges the other day. Go look up Vladimir Putin destroying food imports. It's funny, but at the same time, some people are like, oh, what an idiot! Why would he do that? This is part of the sanctions. He's also sanctioning other players in the global market. So you got to think about that. These sanctions, these issues, is not just conspiracy. It's not game. This affects money. This affects balance of payments. This affects how much money is going in and out of a country. So they're making it harder for Russia to engage with the world, and Russia is kind of doing the same thing, but doing so because Putin has been trying to protect his people in that sense. And it's funny because he's actually done a great job. If you look at how the first years and months of some of the sanctions, it was very hard. That's what led to the ruble weakened greatly. And that was pretty much the biggest modern devaluation until China and anything else, if you really think about it. That affected food prices. Inflation was really, really high. That's why he was destroying these food imports. But part of destroying those imports was it did bring about inflation in the food, or excuse me, no, it did. It did. It made these prices, it reduced the supply of food, making it more expensive. So many interesting things to come up here, but I know I've rambled a long time about it. I just wanted to share that with you guys. I want to see what you guys think. And that's some of me touching on politics a little bit, and something that happened, I guess, entering into a different realm of what you may see, but hopefully you guys see how this relates to your money. And amongst other things, I know I'm going to get shit for it, and I'm fully prepared, because I do want to open your guys' eyes up to politics, to how this is affecting your money. Again, sanctions have a big effect, but any sort of legislation, go ask any big investor. Legislation, man, that's where the money is made and lost. It is the laws. Why do you think organizations and big, multinational corporations are spending so much money on lobbying? Why do they care so much? Think about what happens to a stock when the SEC comes in, any sort of investigation. This is why politics are important. And it's funny because your company, doesn't matter, the company could be great, the economy could be great, that could all change with political action. If any sort of legislation is passed, any sort of dealing, it's huge. And guess what? One of those things, some people think about the WAN's inclusion to the SDR. Some people don't even know what an SDR is. Some people have not even thought about that. This all has an effect. So why I want to show you this, guys, it sucks because you may take something like a conspiracy, you may take that angle, and it could, I guess, negate the way you view it. But this is what I will tell you. I do want you guys to open your eyes towards, the fact that there's more information out there than just CNBC, than just looking at lines and charts. And I'm not saying go study up on fucking New World Order bullshit. No. But I am saying pay attention to what happens in other countries. Because if you don't, we live in, it's globalism nowadays. We are affected and connected to every single country. If you don't think that has an effect, that's kind of ignorant. It's very ignorant, And now, granted, you don't have to. Again, what I'm saying, don't look at every single piece like this and say, "Oh man, something's happening, this and that." But piece things together and at least educate yourself. If I see a crash in Russia, and I could tell you about the last 5 or 10 years of Russia and their economy and what it's been doing and the effect it has on its trade partners, the global economy, commodities, all that. That isn't the information that's going to help you, but you're not going to get that just, surface level bullshit. So I'll leave you guys with that. Stay in school. Make sure you guys give me a comment on this. I really want to know what you guys think. And, if you guys want more political videos, holla at your boy. All right, guys, stay in school.